How's it going, gamer? You got Hands here, and today in Dauntless we're going over a part-breaking build. In this video we have two different builds, one that I suggest and one that only works good in group hunts because it lacks the raw damage because you're using cells like Blade Storm and Sharpened, which only do part damage. So once the part is broken, those cells are essentially negated because you're doing no more part damage. So therefore your battle is going to last longer and the behemoth is going to be a lot more tougher because you're by yourself and all you have is a part breaking build. But in this video I'm going to show you a build that's really great for group hunts only because it's straight part breaks. And that's what's great about it. But however, if you're solo, it'll be just like I mentioned before, it'll be pretty tough. But the main build I'm going to show you is, my opinion, the best build because it has incredible damage, it has incredible attack speed, and it also features Embermane's sword, which does great part damage because after the 7th hit it does plus 250% part damage, which is all you really need, to be honest. Also, our sword special and the mod that we're using synergizes very well with the sword in the build that we're using, so it's pretty optimal, and like I said, in my opinion, it's the best part breaking build. So remember, when you're breaking behemoth parts, they have actual animation indicators on the skin of the behemoth to show if it is light damage like it is here on the left or heavy damage like it is on the right. Just an indicator so you know. How's it going, gamers? So today we're going to be talking about part breaking builds and what's good for them and what's not good, because a lot of people think either or, but I'm here to tell you, and a lot of other veteran players can tell you, that those part breaking cells like Blade Storm and what else we got, Sharpened, that are relative towards adding more part damage aren't really what you want. Unless you're always playing in a group, these cells are a waste of actual damage because using just raw other damage cells like Rage Hunter, Predator and such, for an example, is still doing more damage to that actual part. So what you're getting is still increased damage from these builds that I'm about to show you, and it's more better to break the part. Because like I said, this build here, which I'll eventually show you both of them, with Sharpened and Blade Storm, it's a waste of damage because once you break those parts down, the behemoth has no more parts to break, so you're doing a lot less damage because you have no real damage cells on your build to finish them off. So it's going to be a really long build or a really tough build. So what we're going to get into first is the build that I recommend, just like a raw damaged base build, but it just so happens to have Ember Cutlass, which is Embermane's sword. You could prefer, if you prefer the sword, you could use the sword or the axe. They're both really good. The axe does way more damage, but axe takes a little more skill than sword does. So Embermane's Cutlass has a +3 evasive fury in it, 250% part damage. And in my opinion, that is all we need. That little buff that gives us a little extra part damage, because the rest of our build is going to be nice raw damage and it will work just fine. Trust me, it will, because using slashing weapons is what breaks off parts. Slashing weapons such as swords, chain blades, those all break off parts really good, in axes. So let's get into this. Embermane's Cutlass has plus evasive fury, like I said, and we're going to put a +3 berserker cell in there. Next, we're going to put a +3 conditioning cell to increase our stamina regen because we're going to be using a lot of that. And I like to use Avenging Overdrive. It's really great because it does great damage and attack speed, and does a lot of AoE damage, not to mention the prairie you can do on the behemoth, which is really dope, and I've done some pretty cool prairies. And for the mod, I like to use Whistling Blade. It reduces the stamina cost of repeating elements combo by 25%, and each repeating elements attack grants +5 attack speed up to 30. So this is really dope because we're saving stamina from the above conditions. Is a really good mod that does damage, and we're going to be using repeating elements because it's a really good combo, especially now with the sword meta. Next, we'll be using Drask's helmet. That has a +3 etheric attunement cell, and we're going to put a +3 overpower cell. And then for the chest, it's Mantle of Thorns. That's Kashai's chest piece that has a +3 predator, and we're going to put a +3 conduit cell. And for the hands, we're going to use Nasher's Grips. It has a +3 Rage Hunter, and we're going to put another Rage Hunter cell. And for the feet, we're going to use Stride of Thorns, and that has a +3 Predator, and we're going to put a +3 Etheric Tumult cell in there. And for the lantern, I like to use Drask's Eye for the extra damage. That's 30 increased damage for 6 seconds. But if you feel that you're lacking the attack speed, you know, from Conduit and Evasive Fury, then go ahead and use Embermane's lantern, which will work just as good. And I like to put a +3 Conduit cell in there. And please, Slayers, don't forget about the Tonics. They're very important because that's free damage, free attack speed, and free stagger damage. These are the ones I like to use for this build, Frenzy, Blitz, and Assault. The Y extra stagger damage so we can knock them down and steal those parts away while they're just laying there. And of course, this is increased attack speed and damage right here. So all in all, we have a +6 Etheric Tumult, which is 50% lantern charge from attacks, which will help bring back our Drask's Lantern so we can have that increased 30% damage. And Conduit so we can get a little, and then 35% damage here from Predator. Try not to get hit, you know, that's the whole theory in Dauntless. Do damage but don't get hit. And then right here we got +6 Rage Hunter, that's 40% damage versus Enraged Behemoths. And the Berserker, I try to fit in as much damage as I could in this build. Berserker adds about, what is that? That's 20% damage if you can stack it times 10. Then Conditioning helps our stamina regen. We talked about that earlier. And Evasive Fury comes on the sword, and this is really cool. If you dodge through an attack, you get even more attack speed, which is plus 12.5%. And then I even try to fit even more damage for Overpower. So when the behemoths are staggered, we're doing another 30% damage. So if you check this out, this is a really good build, and it's really dope. And this is what I suggest for part breaking. A good damage, raw damage build with some attack speed buffs, with a sword that actually has buffs towards part breaking. Next, I'm going to show you a build that a lot of people think is the best because the game's throwing these cells in your face. And also, in my opinion, it is good, but only if you're playing in a group. You know, if your other 3 players have damage builds, you know, or wounding builds also, you know, you'll finish the behemoth quick. But if this is just you by yourself with this build that I'm about to show you, then you're missing out on a lot of damage after those parts are broken on the behemoth, because then you're just, all your build is focused on is part breaks, you know, not actual raw damage. So again, I'm going to show this one real quick. And again, I don't really recommend it, but if in a group, like I just said, you can try it out. And you can put a Blade Storm cell in there and a Conditioning cell, and the same mods in Special. Next is Hellplate Cast from Helion that has a +3 Rage Hunter, and this has a +3 Blade Storm cell. And then Drask's Chest Piece that has a +3 Etheric Tumult, and we're going to put a +3 Sharpened cell. And then for the hands, it has a +3 Rage Hunter, we're going to put a +3 Sharpened cell. And for the feet, I try to work with more conditioning instead of just adding other random cells. So this makes conditioning +6, and we're going to put a +3 Overpower cell in there. And the lantern's the same choice. You know, if you want more attack speed, use Embermane. If you want more damage, which I suggest, use Drask's. And then what we have here is a +6 Etheric Tumult. It recharges our lantern as much as possible. And a +6 Blade Storm. Right here, and this is what I'm talking about, gives you +40% part damage. And after dodging through an attack, your next attack deals +400 part damage, which is really dope. But remember, after those parts break, you're not getting these buffs anymore. You can just pretty much cancel these cells out. +6 Conditioning, that's crazy. +30 Stamina Regeneration, which is really good if you can keep up your Repeating Elements combo, which takes a lot of stamina, but not so much with our new mod. +6 Rage Hunter, there's your only buff right there for damage. That's +40% damage versus Rage Behemoths. Here's another part damage that's +6 Sharpened, and that gives you 30% part damage, which is significant. This is, see what I'm going here? This is too much part damage. We don't want this, but I'm still going to show it to you. And then here's our +3 Evasive Fury, attack speed if you dodge. And then Overpower. I try to fit in, like I said, as much damage, but also give you your part breaking buffs. And that's 30% damage versus Staggered Behemoths. So remember, guys, this is my most favorite build over here. The first one I showed you, it's got great damage, great attack speed, and it happens to have a little buff towards part breaking. And you don't really need all of the Blade Storm and Sharpened. And I know I'm sounding like I'm repeating myself, but I'm just hoping, if you happen to skip through the video, you're going to hear what I'm talking about for each different build. So with that in mind, I hope you're able to make these builds, and I hope you're able to get all the parts you need. Have fun! So this fight right here, gamer, is the second build I showed you, which is mostly based off of straight raw part damage with blade storm and sharpened. So you can see the damage differences, but the fight is a little bit more tough. This is a heroic behemoth, so it takes a little bit more time and more patience to get to the parts, but it definitely breaks them, as you can see. And this is the build that I said that I don't recommend for solos, but it does work. I mean, clearly I beat this heroic behemoth in like 3 to 4 minutes. You want to make sure you utilize the repeating elements combo, which is heavy attack, pause, light attack, because that's what I'm doing right there, and that's the most optimal way to do damage and to break parts. So another little tip for when you're searching for different behemoth parts, make sure the part you need is for the behemoth you're fighting. So therefore, what I mean is some of the easier quill shots you can get his spikes from, but his more epic parts you have to fight the heroic version. So make sure you're fighting the right one to make the battle a lot more easier than it should be, versus being real hard when all you need is the simple parts, because otherwise this is going to take you longer, and it's all about time spent, you know what I mean?